Okay, so we are starting Joy Club. This is just a section about how to memorize things. So we did our part, the rest is up to you. Slow down. The more you understand, the less you have to memorize. Don't just read, stop and think. When the book asks you a question, don't just skip to the answer. Imagine that someone really is asking the question. The more deeply you force your brain to think, the better chance you have of learning and remembering. Do the exercises, write your own notes. You put them in, but if we did them for you, that would be like having someone else do your workouts for you. And don't just look at exercises, use a pencil. There's plenty of evidence that physical activity while learning can increase the learning. Read their note of questions. That that means all of them. They're not optional side parts, they're part of the core content. Okay. Make this the last thing you can read before bed, or at least the last challenging thing. Part of the learning, especially the transfer to long-term memory, happens after you put the book down. Your brain needs time on its own to do more processing. If you put in something new during the processing time, some of what you just learned will be lost. Okay, that is interesting. Talk about it out loud. Speaking speaking activates a different part of the brain. If you're trying to understand something or increase your chance of remembering it later, say it out loud. Better still, try to explain it out loud to someone else. You learn more quickly, and you might uncover ideas that you hadn't known were there when you were reading about it. Drink water, not of it. Okay, that's I like. Your brain works in a nice bath of fluid. Dehydration, which can happen before you ever feel thirsty, decreases cognitive function. Listen to your brain. Pay attention to whenever your brain is getting overloaded. If you find yourself starting to skim the surface or forget what you just read, it's time for a break. Once you go past a certain point, you won't learn faster by trying to shove more in, and you might even hurt the process. Feel something. Your brain needs to know that this matters. Get involved with the stories. Make up your own captions for photos. Groaning over a bad joke is still better than feeling nothing at all. Read a lot of code. There's only one way to learn to develop Android apps, write a lot of code. And that's what you're going to do throughout this book. Coding is a skill, and the only way to get good at it is to practice. We're going to give you a lot of practice. Every chapter has exercises that pose a problem for you to solve. Don't just skip over them. A lot of the learning happens when you solve the exercises. We included a solution to each exercise. Don't be afraid to peek at the solution if you get stuck. It's easy to get snagged on something small, but try to solve the problem before you look at the solution. And definitely get it working before you move on to the next part of the okay. So much perfectionist. Beat me, but not to Java. Start off by building an app in the very first chapter. Examples are designed for learning. Optional. Don't skip the exercise. The redundancy is intentional and important. One distinct difference in a head-first book is that we want you to really get it, and we want you to finish the book remembering what you learned. More reference books don't have retention and recall as a goal, but this book is about learning, so you'll see some of the same concepts come up more than once. Brain power exercises don't have answers. For some of them, there is no right answer, and for others, part of the learning experience of the brain power activities is for you to decide if and when your answers are right. In some of the brain power exercises, you will find hints to point you in the right direction. Technical review team, acknowledgements, stuff, getting started, loving it. Android has taken the world by storm. Everybody wants a smartphone or tablet, and Android devices are hugely popular. In this book, we'll teach you how to develop your own apps, and we'll start by getting you to build a basic app and run it on an Android virtual device. Along the way, you'll meet some of the basic components of all Android apps, such as activities and layouts. All you need is a little Java know-how. Welcome to Androidville. Android is the world's most popular mobile platform. At the last count, there were over 2 billion active Android devices worldwide, and that number is growing rapidly. Android is a comprehensive open source platform based on Linux and championed by Google. It is a powerful development framework that includes everything you need to build great apps using a mix of Java and XML. What's more, it enables you to deploy those apps to a wide variety of devices. We're going to build the Android apps using a mixture of Java and XML, which explains things along the way, but you'll need to have a fair understanding of Java to get the most out of this book. Layouts define what each screen looks like. Okay. Layout. Screen. Layout tells Android what the screen in your apps look like. A typical Android app is composed of one or more screens. You define what each screen looks like using a layout to define its appearance. Layouts are generally usually defined in XML and can include GUI components such as buttons, text field, and labels. Activities defines what the app does. Okay, layout is for how it looks and activity is for what it does. Layouts only define the appearance of the app. You define what the app does using one or more activities. An activity is a special Java class that decides which layout to use and tells the app how to respond to the usage. As an example, if a layout includes a button, you need to write Java code in the activity to define what the button should do as you press it. Sometimes extra resources are needed. In addition to activities and layout, Android apps often need extra resources such as image files and application data. You can add any extra files you need to the app. Android apps are really just a bunch of files in a particular directory. When you build your app, all of these files get bundled together, giving you an app you can run on your device. Resource can include sound and image files. The Android platform dissected. The Android platform is made up of a number of different components. It includes core applications such as Context, a set of APIs to help you control what your app looks like and how it behaves, and a whole load of supporting files and libraries. That quickly. Don't worry if this seems like a lot to take in. We're just giving you an overview of what's included in the Android platform. We'll explain the different components in more detail as and when we need to. Android comes with a set of core applications such as Contacts, Phone, Calendar, and a browser. So this is application framework. When you build apps, you have access to the same APIs used by the core applications. You use these APIs to control what your app looks like and how it behaves. The application frameworks are the core APIs. And we have libraries. Underneath the application framework lies a set of C and C++ libraries. These libraries get exposed to you through the API frameworks. and we have the runtime alongside. The Android runtime comes with a set of core libraries that implement most of Java programming language. Each Android app runs in its own process. Underneath, underneath, underneath everything else lies the Linux kernel. Android relies on the kernel for drivers and also core services such as security and memory management. The great news, the great news, the great news is that all of the powerful Android libraries are exposed through APIs in the application framework, and it's these APIs that you use to create great Android apps. All you need to do is Java knowledge. Here's what we are going to do. So let's dive in and create a basic Android app. There are just a few things we need to do. Set up a development environment. We need to install Android Studio, which includes all tools you need to develop. Build a basic app. We'll build a simple app using Android Studio that will display some simple text on the screen. Run the app in the Android emulator and use the built-in emulator to see the app and running. Change the app. Finally, we'll make a few tweaks to the app we created in step 2 and run it again. Are all Android apps developed in Java? You can develop Android apps in other languages too. Most developers use Java, so that we're covering. How much Java do I need to know? How for Android app development? You really need experience with Java Central Edition. If you're feeling copy Java, do I need to know about Swing and AWD? Android doesn't use Swing or AWD, so don't worry if you don't have Java Desktop GUI experience. Your development environment. Java is the most popular Java is the most popular language used to develop Android applications. Android devices don't run .class.jar files. Instead, to improve speed and battery performance, Android devices use their own optimized formats for compiled code. That means you can't use an ordinary Java development environment. You also need a special tool to convert your compiled code into an Android format, to deploy them to an Android device, and to let you debug the application once it's running. All of these comes as a part of the Android SDK. Let's take a look. It's what included. The Android Software Development Kit contains the libraries and tools you need to develop Android apps. They are some of the main parts. SDK platform. There's one of these for each version of Android. SDK tools for debugging and testing, plus other useful utilities. The SDK also features a set of tool platform dependent. You have simple apps. If you want practical code examples to help you understand how to use some of the APIs, the simple apps might help you. Documentation, so you can access the latest API documentation offline. Nice. Android support extra APIs that aren't available in the standard platform. Google Play with it. Allows you to integrate billing services in your app. Android Studio is a very special version of IntelliJ IDEA. IntelliJ IDEA is one of the most popular IDEs for Java development. Android Studio is a version of IDEA that includes a version of Android SDK and extra GUI tools to help you with your Android development. In addition to providing you with an editor and access to tools and libraries in the Android SDK, Android Studio gives you templates you can use to help you create new apps and classes, and it makes it easy to do things such as package your app and run. Install Android Studio. Before we go any further, you need to install Android Studio on your machine. Not including the installation instruction in this book as they can get out of date pretty quickly, but you'll be fine if you follow the online instructions. Once you've installed Android Studio, open it up and follow the instructions to add the latest SDK tools and support libraries. When you're done, you should see the Android Studio welcome screen and ready to build your. You say we're going to use Android Studio to build the Android apps. Do I have to? Strictly speaking, you don't have to use Android Studio to build Android apps. All you need is a tool that will let you write and compile Java code, plus a few other tools to convert the compiled Java into a form that Android devices can run. Android Studio is the official Android IDE, and the Android team recommends using it, but quite a lot of people use IntelliJ IDEA instead. Can I write Android apps without using an IDE? It's possible, but it's more work. Most Android Studio are now created using a build tool called Gradle. Gradle projects can be created and built using a text editor and a command line. A build tool, so is Gradle like an ANT? It's similar, but Gradle is much more powerful than ANT. Gradle can compile and deploy code just like ANT, but it also uses Maven to download any third-party libraries your code needs. Gradle also uses Groovy as a scripting language, which means you can easily create quite complex builds with Gradle. Most apps are built using Gradle. I thought you said most developers use Android Studio. Android Studio provides a graphical interface to Gradle and also to other tools for creating layout, reading logs, and debugging. Building a basic app. Now that you have set up your development environment, you're ready to create your first Android app. Here's what the app will look like. This is the name of the application. This is a very simple app, but that's all you need to know for very first Android app. There will be a small piece of summary text right here that the Android Studio will put in quotes. How to build the app. Whenever you create a new app, you need to create a new project for it. Make sure you have Android Studio open and create new project. The Android Studio welcome screens give you a number of options. If you want to create a new project, click on the start a new project. You click on this option to start a new project. Any project you create will appear here. This is the first project, so this area is currently empty. How to build the app configure. To configure the project. You now need to configure the app by telling Android Studio what you want to call it. What company domain to use and where you would like to store the files. Android Studio uses the company domain and application name to form the name of the package that will be used for your app. As an example, if you give your app a name My First App and use a company domain name spread.com, Android Studio will derive a package name of form.spread.myfirstapp. Package name is really important in Android as it's used by Android devices to uniquely identify your app. The package name must stay the same for the lifetime of your app. It is a unique identifier for your app and used to manage multiple versions of the same app. Enter an application of My First App, enter a company domain, uncheck the option to include C++ support and accept the default project location, and click on Next button. Some versions of Android Studio may have an extra option asking if you want to include Kotlin support. Uncheck this option if it's there. The wizard forms a package name by combining the application name and the company domain. Right? The application name is shown in the Google Play Store and various other places too. Right. Use a company domain. Uncheck this option include C++ support. If prompted, also uncheck the Kotlin. All the files for a project will be stored here. Specify the minimum SDK. You now need to indicate the minimum SDK of Android your app will use. API levels increase with every new version of Android. Unless you want only your app to run on a very newest devices, you'll probably want to specify one of the older APIs. Right. Here we're choosing minimum SDK of API level 19, which means it will be able to run on those devices. Also, we are only going to create a version of our app to run on phones and tablets, so we'll leave other options checked. The minimum required SDK. मेरा phone देना? Your app will run on devices this level or higher. It won't run on devices with a low API. Android versions are close. You've probably heard a lot of things about Android that sound tasty like jelly bean, Kit Kat, lollipop, and yogurt. So what's with all the confectionery? Android versions have a version number and a code name. The version number gives the precise version Android example 7, while the code name is more generic, friendly name that several versions of Android that may cover several versions of Android. The API level refers to the version of the API used by applications. As an example, the equivalent API level for Android 7.1 is okay. Earlier, when you develop Android apps, you really need to consider which version of Android you want your app to be compatible with. If you specify that your app is only compatible with the latest version of the SDK, you might find that it can't be run on many devices. Activities and layouts from 50,000 feet. The next thing you'll be prompted to do is to add an activity to your project. Every Android app is a collection of screens, and each screen is composed of an activity and layout. An activity is a single defined thing that your user can do. You might have an activity to compose an email, take a photo, or to find a contact. Activities are usually associated with one screen and they're written in Java. A layout describes the appearance of the screen. Layouts are written as XML files and they tell Android how the different screen elements are arranged. Presented activities fine action. Let's look in more detail at how activities and layouts work together to create a user interface. So, the device launches your app and creates an activity object. The activity object specifies a layout. The activity tells Android to display the layout on screen. 4. User interacts with the layout that's displayed on the device. The activity responds to this interaction. 4. The activity updates the display which the user sees. So these are all important. First we get activity, then it refers to the layout. The layout Then the layout is displayed on the screen. User interacts with the layout. Layout updates. Code. Activity updates the display, which the user sees on the device. Now that you know a bit more about what activities and layouts are, let's go through the last couple of steps in create, project, result, and get it to create an activity and layout. Add an activity. The next screen lets you choose among a series of templates you can use to create an activity and layout. We're going to create an app with an empty activity and layout. So we choose empty activity as an option. Okay. There are other types of activity you can choose from, but for this exercise, make sure you select the empty activity. How to build the app? Okay, customize the activity. Customize. You will now be asked what you want to call the screen's activity and layout. Enter an activity name of main activity. Make sure the option to generate a layout file is checked. Enter a layout name activity underscore main and uncheck backwards compatibility option. The activity is a Java class and layout is an XML file. So the names given here will create a Java class file called mainActivity.java and an XML file called activity underscore main.xml. When you click on finish, the Android Studio will build your app. You just created your first Android app. So what just happened? The Create New Project wizard created a project for your app configured to your specifications. You defined which versions of You defined which versions of Android the app should be compatible with, and the wizard created all of the files and folders. The wizard created an activity, and okay, so these are the two things that happened. Right. When you finish creating your project by going through the wizard, Android Studio automatically displays the project for you. Here's what a project looks like. Don't worry if it is complicated, we will break it down to the next few pages. Okay, so let me create a new activity. Create a new project. Activity activity. Next, to save this file. Chapter provided remember the name of the chapter. Getting started. Getting started. Right. Getting started. Okay. So now I want to name first app. Here we are going to be sharing Android development. Getting started. Save location should not contain white spaces as this will no white spaces now. Save location should not contain any white spaces. Alright, I think it's just one underscore or one dash. One dash first. Let us fix it. You getting started. Cancel. Get it deleted. So let me just check previous activity. Actually, share. Save location should not contain. Dude, spaces. Yeah. Okay, so I have to. Alright, we're doing it. Yes, sir, we're doing it. For development. First, so development. So, getting started. Chapter getting started. This is really weird, but I guess we can. Also, I think it will somewhat break my existing. But okay, now it's okay. Alright, so then we finish it. And we close this. Okay, so execute service. Cannot run git. Git is not installed. Install git. Git for Windows. Cannot run git download and install. Could not install git. Do I really need git? Man, it's okay. I don't need it. Choose the layout tool. Okay, it's still doing something. In the meanwhile, I think it will say, yeah, locate it again. Right. So, this is a lot of things. And it is going on. Voting, middle project. So we have right, that is setting up and running configurations, and it is all. This is it. Yes, this is it. Between the active device. I can run. Okay, so far so good. Let me see here. Okay, Android Studio creates a complete folder structure for you. An Android app is really just a bunch of valid files in a particular folder structure. And Android Studio sets up all this up for you when you create a new app. The easiest way of looking at this folder structure is the Explorer. Okay, now it is launching. Great. Great success. Great. So the Explorer contains all of the projects that you currently have open. To expand or collapse folders, just click on the arrows on the left. The folder structure includes different types of files. If you browse through the folder structure, you'll see that the wizard has created various types of files and folders for you. Java and XML source file. These are the activity and layout files for your app. Android generated Java files. These are some extra. These are some extra Java files you don't need to touch that Android Studio generates for you automatically. Resource file. These includes default image files for icons, styles your app might use, and any common string values your app might want to look up. Android libraries. In the wizard, you specify the minimum SDK version you want your app to be compatible with. Android Studio makes sure your app includes the relevant Android libraries for that version. And then we have configuration files. The configuration files tell Android what's actually in the app and how it should run. Okay, let me take a look at Java resource files. Backup, drawer, layout, activity, values, strings, and colors. Okay, and then certain scripts, manifests. I don't think defines what we can do with it, right? So, nearing the end. Let's take a closer look at some of the key files and folders in Android. I think this is it. Oh shit. I save. Want to save a copy. I can do that. So, oh, sorry, that came. Let's not let way more. Okay, here we are. 58. So, I'll get to it in next time. Until then.